The moment he walked through that door, everything changed. Not a word was spoken at first, but his face said what his voice couldn't. She noticed it instantly. This story begins on an ordinary evening that didn't feel ordinary at all. The kind of evening where the air feels heavier, even before something goes wrong. Her name was Claire. She had been married to Daniel for just over 8 years. Their life wasn't perfect, but it was steady, warm, familiar. Daniel worked long hours at a logistics firm outside the city. Claire had grown used to late dinners and quiet nights. That evening, she was setting plates on the table. 2 plates, as always. She heard the front door open, then close. No greeting followed. That was the first sign. Daniel usually called out her name the second he stepped inside, even on his worst days. But this time, there was only silence. Claire wiped her hands on a towel and turned. Daniel stood near the door, his jacket still on. His shoulders were tense, his eyes unfocused. And behind him stood someone else. Mark, Daniel's coworker, the one who had transferred to another branch months earlier. Claire hadn't expected to see him again, not like this. Mark looked different, thinner, paler. And his expression, it wasn't fear exactly. It was something deeper, heavier, like someone carrying a truth they didn't want to deliver. "Hey," Claire said gently. Her voice felt too loud in the room. Mark nodded once. Daniel didn't move. Dinner continued to cool behind her. "I didn't know Mark was back in town," she added, forcing a small smile. Daniel finally spoke. His voice was low, careful. "He just returned today." That was all he said. Mark shifted his weight, eyes fixed on the floor. Claire felt her chest tighten. This wasn't a casual visit. She could feel it in her bones. They moved into the living room. No one sat down at first. Claire waited. Years of marriage had taught her when to be patient and when to pay attention. Mark cleared his throat. "I'm sorry to come by unannounced," he said. His voice shook slightly. Claire nodded. "It's okay, really." Daniel sat down, elbows on his knees. His hands were clasped together. That's when Claire noticed them trembling. She had never seen Daniel like this, not even during the hardest moments of their lives. Mark finally looked up. His eyes met Claire's for just a second. Then he looked away. "I didn't want to do this over the phone," Mark said. Some things shouldn't be said that way. Claire felt a chill run through her. She glanced at Daniel. He swallowed hard. "What's going on?" she asked softly. Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it. Mark spoke instead. "There was something that happened before I transferred," he said. "Something I didn't understand at the time." Claire listened carefully. Every word felt deliberate. "I thought it was nothing," Mark continued. "Just workplace stress, miscommunication." Daniel's breathing grew uneven. "But then," Mark said, his voice lowering, "I learned something that made me come back." Silence filled the room again. Claire's heart pounded. Her thoughts raced. Was this about work? Was Daniel in trouble? Mark stood up slowly. "I didn't want to believe it," he said. "And I still hope I'm wrong." Daniel finally looked at Claire. There was regret in his eyes. And fear. Not fear for himself. Fear of hurting her. That realization struck harder than any words could. "Daniel?" Claire whispered. He reached for her hand. His grip was tight, almost desperate. "I should have told you sooner," he said. Claire's breath caught. Mark stepped back, giving them space. But his expression didn't soften. Claire felt the ground shift beneath her. The life she thought she understood suddenly felt unfamiliar. Fragile. "I don't know how to say this," Daniel continued. "And I don't know how you'll hear it." Claire nodded slowly. "Just tell me," she said. Her voice was steady. Her heart was not. Mark turned toward the window. Daniel squeezed her hand once more. And then, just as Daniel was about to speak, a knock echoed through the room. Sharp. Unexpected. All three of them froze. Claire's eyes moved toward the door. Her chest tightened with dread. Because somehow she knew whatever waited on the other side would change everything. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales.
That knock didn't sound urgent, but it felt final. Claire stood up slowly, her legs unsteady. Daniel didn't let go of her hand at first. "Wait," he said quietly. She looked at him, at the worry carved deep into his face. "It's okay," she replied, even though she wasn't sure it was. She walked to the door and opened it. No one was there. Just the empty hallway. Quiet. Still. Claire exhaled, confused. She closed the door and leaned her forehead against it for a moment. Her heart was racing. When she turned back, Daniel was standing now. Mark sat down heavily on the couch. "That was strange," Claire said. Daniel nodded, but his eyes didn't follow her words. He looked distracted, lost. She returned to the living room and sat across from them, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "Please," she said, "tell me what's going on." Daniel took a deep breath, the kind people take before stepping off a ledge. "Before Mark transferred," he began, "there were changes at work." Claire listened. "There was pressure," Daniel continued. "Deadlines, mistakes, blame being passed around." Mark nodded slowly. His jaw tightened. "I noticed something odd," Mark added, "but I didn't understand it back then." Claire looked between them. Her mind tried to connect dots that didn't yet exist. "There were shipments being flagged," Mark said. "Reports that didn't line up." Daniel rubbed his temples. "I thought it was just poor management," Daniel said.
"I told myself it would sort itself out." Claire's stomach nodded. "But it didn't," Mark said. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "After I transferred," he continued, "I heard rumors." Rumors. That word echoed in Claire's head. "People were saying Daniel was being protected," Mark said carefully, "that mistakes were being quietly corrected." Claire turned to Daniel. "Is that true?" she asked. Daniel didn't answer right away. He stared at the floor. "I didn't ask for protection," he said finally, "but I didn't push back either." Claire felt a sharp ache in her chest. "So you knew something was wrong?" she said. "And you stayed silent?" Daniel nodded. "I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid of losing my job. Afraid of failing us." Claire closed her eyes. She thought of the late nights, the tired smiles, the promises that everything was fine. Mark stood up and paced slowly. "I found documents," he said. "Old ones, copies that didn't match the official records." Claire's eyes widened. "And they all pointed back to Daniel's department," Mark added. "Not because he caused the problem." Daniel looked up sharply. "But because he was closest to it," Mark finished. Silence settled again. Claire felt torn between relief and dread. "So what does this mean?" she asked. Mark stopped pacing. "It means an investigation is coming," he said. "Soon." Daniel's shoulders slumped. "I was going to tell you," he said to Claire. "I swear I was." She believed him. That made it hurt more. "Why come here now?" Claire asked Mark. Mark met her gaze. "Because someone is trying to shift the blame," he said. "And I won't let it fall on the wrong person." Daniel stood and walked toward the window. "I should have spoken up months ago," he said. "I thought staying quiet would keep us safe." Claire stood too and joined him. "You were trying to protect us," she said softly. "But silence has a cost." Daniel turned to her. "I never lied to you," he said. "I just didn't tell you everything." Claire nodded slowly. She understood that difference. But understanding didn't erase fear. Mark cleared his throat. "There's something else." Both of them turned. Mark hesitated. "There's a meeting tomorrow. Upper management. Legal team." Claire's breath caught. "And Daniel's name is on the list," Mark added. Daniel closed his eyes. "I don't know what will happen," Mark continued. "But I wanted you both to hear it from me first.
Claire felt the room tilt slightly. Tomorrow. Everything suddenly had a deadline. She reached for Daniel's hand again. This time she held it firmly. "We'll face it together," she said softly. But his eyes were filled with uncertainty. Mark picked up his jacket. "I'll stand by the truth, whatever it costs." When he left, the apartment felt too quiet. Dinner still sat untouched. Cold. Claire leaned her head against Daniel's shoulder.
"What if this changes everything?" she whispered. Daniel wrapped her arm around her. "Then we change with it," he said. But even as he spoke, a shadow passed over his face. Because both of them knew. Tomorrow would bring answers. And not all answers were gentle. The morning arrived too quickly. Claire barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, her thoughts pulled her back to the same place. That look on Mark's face. The way Daniel's voice had faltered. By the time the sun rose, her chest already felt tight. Daniel moved quietly around the apartment. He dressed in silence, tying his shoes with slow care. Claire watched from the doorway. "Do you want me to come with you?" she asked. Daniel paused. "They said no family," he replied. "But knowing you're here helps." She nodded and stepped forward, smoothing his collar. "Whatever happens," she said, "I believe you." Daniel's eyes softened. That meant more to him than she realized. When the door closed behind him, the apartment felt hollow. Claire tried to distract herself. She cleaned. She rearranged things that didn't need fixing. Nothing worked. Hours passed like thick fog. Then her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Meeting delayed. Still waiting. Her heart skipped. She typed back a short reply. "I'm here." She set the phone down and stared at the wall. Her thoughts drifted to the early days of their marriage, the trust they had built slowly, carefully. Had she missed signs? Had Daniel carried this burden alone for too long? Another message arrived. "They're asking questions I don't understand." Claire felt helpless. She wished she could sit beside him, hold his hand the way she had the night before. Instead, she waited. Late afternoon light filled the room when the door finally opened. Daniel stepped inside, and Claire knew instantly. His expression told her everything. Not relief, not anger, something quieter, something broken. She rushed to him. "What happened?" she asked. Daniel set his bag down slowly. "They're moving forward," he said. "With the investigation." Claire swallowed. "Does that mean—" "It means uncertainty." Daniel interrupted gently. "For now." He sank onto the couch. Claire sat beside him. "They asked about decisions I made years ago," he continued. "Choices that felt small at the time." Claire listened. "I answered honestly," he said. "But honesty doesn't always feel safe." Claire rested her head on his shoulder. "Mark called." Daniel added. He spoke up. That surprised her. He told them the discrepancies didn't start with me. That I tried to raise concerns. Claire exhaled. "That matters," she said. Daniel nodded. "But there's pressure," he admitted. "People want closure. Someone to point to." Claire felt anger rise quietly inside her. "You're not a target," she said firmly. "You're a person." Daniel gave a small, tired smile. "Sometimes those things don't matter equally," he replied. That evening, they ate a simple meal in near silence. Not because they had nothing to say, but because words felt fragile. After dinner, Daniel's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and froze. "Unknown number," he said. Claire felt her pulse quicken. "Answer it," she said softly. Daniel did. A calm voice spoke on the other end. Too calm. When the call ended, Daniel stared at the phone. "What was it?" Claire asked. "They're placing me on temporary leave," he said. "Paid, but still." Claire sat down slowly. "They said it's routine," Daniel continued, "but routine doesn't feel like this." Claire reached for him. "We'll adjust," she said, "like we always do." Daniel leaned into her. "I hate that you're pulled into this," he said. "I chose this life," she replied. "I chose you." That night, sleep came easier than expected. Not because fear was gone, but because they faced it together. Just before midnight, Daniel's phone buzzed again. A message from Mark. Daniel read it, then handed the phone to Claire. "There's something I didn't say before. We need to talk. Soon." Claire looked up at Daniel. His face tightened. "What didn't he say?" she asked. Daniel shook his head. "I don't know," he said. "But whatever it is, it's not small." Claire felt the familiar weight return to her chest. Outside, the city lights flickered. And somewhere in the quiet, another truth waited to surface. Mark arrived the next afternoon. He didn't knock this time. Daniel had left the door unlocked. Claire noticed immediately how tense Mark looked, more tense than before. He stood just inside the doorway, hands clasped together, as if grounding himself. "I didn't sleep," Mark said quietly. Neither had they. They sat in the living room again, the same place where everything had started to unravel. "I should have told you both sooner," Mark began. "I was trying to protect someone." Claire leaned forward. "Who?" she asked. Mark hesitated. "Daniel," he said. Daniel's head lifted sharply. "What do you mean?" he asked. Mark took a deep breath. "When I transferred," he explained, "I was offered a choice." Claire felt her stomach tighten. "They knew mistakes had been made," Mark continued, "bigger than paperwork, bigger than one department." Daniel listened closely now. "They wanted it to stay quiet," Mark said, "and they wanted a name ready just in case." Claire's heart pounded. "They implied Daniel's name?" she asked. Mark nodded once. "I refused," he said. "That's why I transferred." Daniel stared at him. "You never told me this," Daniel said. "I thought leaving would end it," Mark replied. "I was wrong." Claire's thoughts raced. "So the investigation now," she said slowly, "isn't just about errors," Mark finished. "It's about control." Daniel stood and paced the room. "They're looking for someone to absorb the blame," he said. "Someone steady. Reliable." Mark met his eyes. "Someone people trust," he added. Claire stood too. "That's not fair," she said. "And it's not right." Mark nodded. "I found emails," he said. "Old ones. Buried." Daniel froze. "Emails?" he asked. "Instructions," Mark replied. "Pressure from above. Quiet corrections." Claire felt a surge of anger. "So they knew?" she said. "They all knew." "Yes," Mark replied. "And now they're pretending they didn't." Daniel rubbed his face slowly. "Why tell us now?" he asked. Mark looked at Claire. "Because I'm done being quiet," he said. "And because Claire deserves the truth too." She appreciated that more than he knew. "There's more," Mark added. Daniel stopped pacing. "They're planning to conclude quickly," Mark said, "before anyone digs deeper." Claire felt a chill. "When?" she asked. "Within days," Mark replied. Daniel looked at Claire. "What do we do?" he asked softly. Claire took a breath. "We don't panic," she said, "and we don't hide." Mark nodded. "I'll share what I have," he said. "But it puts me at risk too." Daniel placed a hand on Mark's shoulder. "You already took a risk," he said. "Coming back." That evening, Mark left them copies of documents, printed, highlighted. The weight of them felt heavy in Claire's hands. After Mark left, the apartment felt different. Not quieter, sharper. Daniel sat beside Claire, reading silently.
They were careful, he said, but not careful enough. Claire watched his face.
"You're not alone in this," she said. Daniel nodded. "I know," he replied, "and that scares me even more." That night, Daniel received another call. This time, it wasn't unknown. He answered, listening carefully. Claire watched his expression change. "Yes," Daniel said, "I understand." When he hung up, he didn't speak right away. "They want me back in tomorrow," he said. "One more meeting." Claire's heart skipped. "Why?" she asked. "They said it's to clarify details," Daniel replied, "but it feels like a test." Claire reached for his hand. "Then tell the truth," she said. Daniel smiled faintly. "That's the plan," he said, "whether they want it or not." Later, as they prepared for bed, Claire paused. "What if telling the truth costs you everything?" she asked. Daniel looked at her. "Then at least I won't lose myself," he said. Claire held him tightly. Outside, rain began to fall softly against the windows, and somewhere beyond their walls, decisions were being made. Decisions that would soon collide with the truth. The final meeting felt quieter than the others. Too quiet. Daniel noticed it the moment he walked into the room. The careful smiles, the polite tone. Claire waited at home, pacing slowly. Her phone rested in her hand the entire time. She didn't try to distract herself anymore. She had learned that waiting deserved honesty. Inside the conference room, Daniel sat upright, calm, focused. He answered every question clearly, not defensively, not emotionally, just truth. When they asked about the old decisions, he explained the pressure, the emails, the instructions that had come from above. He didn't accuse, he didn't exaggerate, he simply told the story as it happened. The room shifted. One of the senior managers leaned back, another avoided eye contact. They had expected hesitation, they hadn't expected clarity. Daniel finished speaking and folded his hands. "I won't accept responsibility for something I didn't create," he said, "but I will take responsibility for staying silent." That sentence landed harder than anything else. There was a pause. Then someone asked for the documents. Mark's documents. Printed, highlighted, undeniable. The meeting ended without conclusions, but the tone had changed. When Daniel finally walked through their front door that evening, Claire looked up from the couch, and she saw it. The tension was still there, but the fear was not. "How did it go?" she asked. Daniel set his bag down and exhaled. "They postponed their decision," he said. "They're expanding the investigation." Claire's heart lifted. "That's good," she said carefully. "It's honest," Daniel replied, "and that's enough for now." He sat beside her, pulling her close. "Mark called," Daniel added. They thanked him for cooperating. Claire smiled faintly. "He did the right thing," she said. "So did you," Daniel replied. Days passed, then weeks. The uncertainty remained, but it softened. One morning, Daniel received an email. He read it twice, then once more. Claire watched his face closely. "They cleared me," he said quietly. Her breath caught. "They acknowledged the pressure," he continued, "and the mistakes didn't start with my department." Claire felt tears rise. "And?" she whispered. "They offered my position back," Daniel said, "with changes, transparency." Claire laughed softly through tears. "That's incredible," she said. Daniel shook his head. "What's incredible," he said, "is that I almost let fear rewrite who I am." Claire hugged him tightly. That evening, they invited Mark over for dinner. Nothing fancy, just warm food and open conversation. Mark looked lighter than before, relieved. "I'm transferring again," he said, "by choice this time." Daniel nodded. "You helped more than you know," he said. Mark smiled. "So did you," he replied, "by telling the truth when it mattered."
After Mark left, Claire and Daniel stood by the window. The city lights looked softer now, less threatening. "You know," Claire said, "when you came home that first night, I was scared." Daniel looked at her. "So was I," he said. "But we didn't break," she continued. "We grew." Claire kissed her forehead gently. "Sometimes," he said, "what returns isn't a problem." Claire smiled. "Sometimes," she replied, "it's the truth finally asking to be seen." They stood there quietly, together, and for the first time in a long while, the future didn't feel heavy. It felt honest.